Discuss former Deputy Assistant Secretary at the Department of Homeland Security and Senior Advisor to the Senate Intelligence Committee, Lauren Tomlinson. Lauren, good to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
That looks like a very brittle front line to me. If Ukrainian forces are short of munitions, and I've been told this for weeks, and they say that they're losing soldiers and ground as a result, Russia adding forces, personnel, artillery fire, is there a danger that they break through Ukrainian lines?
Absolutely. I think that's why it's even more imperative that the United States does provide aid at this time. Ukraine has been fighting this war for so long at this point. They are running low. And thankfully, their European allies, NATO, is stepping up to increase their defenses, increase spending. They are stepping in where the United States isn't. But, I think that's why at this time you've heard in that package that it's important that we get aid to them and we rebolster their supplies. And that I think that illustrates exactly why.
The vast majority of people in Washington, including the vast majority of folks on Capitol Hill, Republicans and Democrats, agree with what you're saying there. And yet a minority, crucially including the leadership and crucially including the likely Republican nominee, disagree. They're standing in the way. You know the politics, you work on the Hill. Is there a way that it gets through at this point?
I think at some point there is. There's enough Republicans, I think, that are taking this seriously, that really want to see this, that will be able to convince those members slowly. Obviously, there's deals that need to be done, border security, other domestic issues that they're tying to this. But what I look at the most is as we've seen an absence of American leadership on the world stage, Russia, Iran, and China are the ones stepping in to fill that void, and they've become more emboldened. At some point, the politics of the moment are going to feed into that, to where the Republicans are not going to be able to say we cannot involve ourselves on the world stage anymore. And I think that's going to be the turning point.
In the meantime, while the U.S. dithers, the Europeans, we've seen the French President Emmanuel Macron speak in very harsh terms about the threat from Russia. He said today France is ready to contribute to an initiative led by like the Czech Republic, now known as Czechia, to source ammunition for Ukraine even outside the EU. Can they fill the gap, or is that only a temporary Band-Aid in effect? It's
only a temporary Band-Aid. They just don't have enough defense manufacturing capabilities like the United States does. So that's why it's so imperative that we're involved in this. It's not just providing the money, but it's also providing some of the capabilities that the rest of the world just doesn't have, because we're the superpower in this arena.
No question. Stand by, Lauren, because I want to check in on another topic we've been following. President Biden says a potential ceasefire is, quote, in the hands of Hamas. This says negotiations between Hamas and mediators are ongoing in Cairo, though Egyptian state media is reporting there are difficulties. And now a new United Nations report says there is clear and convincing evidence that hostages held in Gaza were sexually abused. And there are reasonable grounds to believe that such sexual violence is ongoing. CNN's Paula Hancock has been filing on this, and she has the latest. What more are we learning here? Because there had been some UN members raising questions about these findings, but now it seems that the evidence is definitive.
Well, Jim, I think you can certainly say it's the most definitive report that we have seen so far. Certainly this has been something that has been discussed in the past. But this was a team that was headed up by the UN Special Envoy for sexual violence in conflict. She had a team for 2 weeks in Israel, and she was talking to witnesses, to survivors. They said that they viewed about 50 hours of footage from the day of October 7th and those attacks. And they say that there is clear evidence that there was sexual violence used in conflict on that particular day. And as you say, clear and convincing information that hostages in Gaza have been sexually abused, and concerns that this violence could be ongoing. So we also heard from this UN team that they did find difficulties in trying to gather this information, saying that there is a fair lack of trust within the country at this point when it comes to institutions, including the United Nations. And so some who actually survived attacks did not want to talk to them. So they had limitations in that respect. But going forward, we have heard from Hamas. They have denied it, as they have in the past, saying that they are unfounded lies. But it has been welcomed by Israeli officials as proof, they say, and acceptance of what they have been claiming for some time, that there was sexual violence used in conflict as a weapon of war by Hamas operatives. Jim?
Yeah, just alarming to hear, and the fact that they believe it's still ongoing. Paula Hancock, thanks so much. Back now with me, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, Lauren Tomlinson. Tell me about the Biden administration's messaging on this, because I was struck by Kamala Harris's words over the weekend calling for an immediate ceasefire. Since then, the language has said, well, Blinken included in this saying, well, it's on Hamas to deliver the immediate ceasefire. In effect, the onus is on them. But do you sense a change here in the administration's position, an increase in the pressure on Israel, and how might that play out then in Biden's message at the State of the Union?
I think you've definitely seen a shift, and especially since the aid issues have popped up, that the White House has been very frustrated with Israel, and you hear this no excuse language when it comes to humanitarian aid for the Palestinians. But Kamala, it was a huge shift, and I even read that it was watered down. So it was very strong from what she wanted to say. So it was very strong language coming out of the White House, the strongest that we've seen, pushing for a ceasefire. And then that was, of course, watered down. And then now today, with the negotiations of the ceasefire and how far they've come along with that, now laying at the feet of Hamas, saying, Israel has agreed to this, the parameters of this ceasefire, now it is on you. So I do think that we will see Biden come out in strong support of Israel in the State of the Union. And so Kamala and some of this messaging this week previewing that was to kind of do a political nod to his base to make sure that they know that he is putting pressure on them,
he's listening.
He is listening. But at the State of the Union, when the world's watching, he's going to come out strong.
So in the midst of this, you got something weird going on, because you have Benny Gantz, who's a member of the Israeli War Cabinet, but a rival of Netanyahu, visiting Washington. Blinken met with him. Kamala Harris met with him. Netanyahu said, hey, he's not our guy. I don't want my ambassador meeting with him. Why? Why do you think they met with Gantz here? Is this a deliberate effort to, I don't know, drive a wedge? Weaken Netanyahu?
I don't see that. I think the White House finds Gantz easier to deal with because he's a political moderate. So I think there's, again, been a lot of frustration about the aid going into Gaza at this time. And so they think that if they can have another channel, another senior official, then that will be beneficial. The reality is Gantz is absolutely no different from a policy perspective than Netanyahu. He's on his war council, or his war cabinet, very small war cabinet. They are aligned on all of the major policy decisions, including going into Rafah. And I think that Gantz took it upon himself to come and kind of gauge the temperature of the United States, key ally, make sure that the support is there. I think he was actually surprised at what he found as far as the White House's messaging to him.
Interesting. Wait, surprised from the White House? Based on, you mean on the immediate ceasefire?
Yes. Yes. The frustrations that the White House has with Israel's actions and their move towards not allowing enough aid. So there was definitely a venting session for the White House.
Yeah, they seem to have taken the lid off a little bit. Lauren Tomlinson, thanks so much.